librarian, Ericson. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Doug?
That's fabulous. And we got something really cool this morning. I was downloading it the other day, and man, I haven't heard a song like that in a long time. So tell us about it.
This is a group called Love Song. And some of your listeners might be familiar with them. They're kind of like the predecessor, I guess you might say, to bands like Petra and Sweet Comfort Band. They started actually as early as 1970.
That's amazing. Now, you say a predecessor to a group like Petra or something, because they're kind of more. As soon as I heard them, I thought, oh my goodness, this is the style of music I used to hear when I was in high school. It's I don't know how to describe it. It's pop. It's not heavy rock. It's like a lot of the top 40 music was back in the 70s when I was in high school. It's a great song.
Yeah, I think I read something in the CCM magazine not too long ago that said that at one time they were kind of considered the Christian Beatles because they're kind of more that style of more driven toward guitar and drums and more of a, I guess you might call it a skilled back a little bit production more so than a lot of the Christian music you may hear nowadays. It's so electronically based.
Right. Can I tell you something interesting? And this really struck me the other day when I was in church. And with what you just said, it came to the forefront of my mind. I was raised Baptist. And the Baptist church I was went to was really quite progressive because we put a group together. It was what you would call a contemporary choir. And we did a lot of the contemporary musicals that they had back in the 70s. And we had drums and guitars and everything else. And that was pretty much unheard of in the Baptist church. In fact, probably unheard of in any church back then. And that's what brought me into a lot of these love songs, falls into that category with the music that got. And it was interesting because I remember that one pastor we had actually made us take the drums out. He wouldn't let us play drums. And so imagine my shock a couple weeks ago when I started attending a new Baptist church and they got a full band playing. I think when I hear the song like Love Song, it takes me back to when that first occurred and it kind of blows me away when I come forward to now. That's probably going to keep off the card. Jump in.
Oh no, that's okay. This.
It just, when you said that, it made me think about that. I thought, okay, I'm sure. Because music's come a long way. But you mentioned drums and guitars. And there was a time they didn't want to play drums and guitars in the church.
Right, and that's still somewhat the case in my growing up years. I remember it kind of getting some different remarks from the congregation once he saw more drums and electric guitar on the platform and those kind of things. And I think by and large nowadays it's more or less accepted fact that you're going to have some kind of band up there that includes electronics like that.
Well, that's true. That's true. I also never kind of understood the concept of maybe I would say demonizing instruments.
Yeah.
So I was always for the guitars and the drums because I just enjoyed them. So tell me about Love Song.
Well, Love Song is another one of these groups that we've talked about before on Sunday mornings with Doug, with you, that came out of the genesis, if you want to call it that way, of Chuck Smith's church, Calvary Chapel, there in Southern California. That's also where Sweet Comfort Band came from, with Brian Duncan and friends. And it's just one of those kind of things that cropped up around the early time of Christian music, around the same time we talked about with Larry Norman and all these kind of people. That was like late 60s, early 70s. And actually Love Song was another one of those groups we talked about earlier that was able to perform at Expo 72. So there are some consistent areas of influence, I guess you might call it, with some of these groups appearing on the same stage even at one point. This group, notably, has Chuck Girard in it. He went on to a successful solo career and still does some solo things, as far as I know these days. And Tommy Coombs was also part of the original group of Love Song. Now,
There's a name I forgot.
people might forget his name, but they probably don't forget what he did in Christian music. Early 70s, he was probably the main person that helped put together Maranatha Singers, which gave us so many of the numbered praise albums.
Right.
And that would be probably called the earlier praise and worship music This kind of evolved into what we know today as the praise and worship movement kind of thing. But back in the day, I mean, we had hymn books side by side with books from Maranatha music that gave us some of the great inspirational praise and worship choruses that Tommy Coombs and friends took care of. Other names you might recognize from the band in later years was Denny Corral. You might remember he was part of a, I guess you might call it a rock and roll group called Blues Image.
That was the first Christian artist I ever, he was the first Christian artist I ever knew.
Yep, so he was part of that group at one point. And they've actually lost a member not too awful long ago. I'm trying to remember his name here. I believe it's, I want to say it's something Wall. I can't remember his first name. But I believe he was their guitarist. And I'm looking here to see if I can catch his first name here. But yes, I believe he passed away not too awful long ago. And he was around long enough for a revival. They did a comeback kind of tour, I believe it back in '94. And did a lot of the same songs they did back in the early days, including Welcome Back and Front Seat, Back Seat, some of those kind of songs. In fact, that's one of the songs that even Dallas Home referred back to when he did his big live album back in 1977 or so, was Front Seat, Back Seat, was a song of theirs.
You know, it's hard to believe, Steve, that we just keep talking about, and when I'm a little older when I was introduced, we're talking 45 and close to 50 years ago.
Right.
It's just amazing that this style of music started back then.
Yeah, Bob Wall was the guitarist that I was speaking of that passed away not too awful long ago. Jay Truax was also part of their original group, original foursome, when it first started back in 1970 at Calvary Church.
Calvary Church, so it's the California church, it's Calvary Church. So when Chuck Smith, it really kicked off a lot of what they referred to as Jesus music then, and it's now contemporary Christian music, correct?
Right, and that can be traced back to a lot of different artists. I want to say maybe even Randy Stonehill came out of that time period as well at one point.
He did. I recall hearing something from him not too long ago when he started that group. You know, it's interesting to me, just as a side note, that talking about California churches, I was talking about a very good friend of mine years ago. I used to perform with years ago, and he does incredibly well in rock music today, and he's heavily involved in California churches. Good job there. It's interesting that here's a rock and roll art, and here he is attending a church, a Christian church on the East Coast, or on the West Coast.
And by the time they did this particular song we're going to hear, this is up to 1972, their first release called Love Song. They ended up doing, I think, about three releases altogether, probably four, including that revival one that I talked about back in '94. But this is one of their first songs that came off that first album, Love Song, and this is a song called Let Us Be One.
All right, well, let's go to it.
Hope people enjoy it. It's a kind of a throwback here, but I think they'll enjoy the message and the style of this kind of, I guess you might call it more of an unplugged kind of sound, more so than today's CCM.
Yeah, like I said, it goes back to the top 40 music that I recall from my high school years in the 70s.
Right.
All right, Stephen, we're going to Love Song, Let Us Be One, and I appreciate it, and you'll join us again next week for CCM Flashback. We're on you, Kurtz.
Hey, sounds good, Doug. Thanks so much.
Lord, don't let me strive against my brother. I'm so tired of it, don't want to do it no more. Lord, don't let us fight against each other. Let us be one in you. Lord, give us love for one another, in what we say, yes, and what we do. Lord, teach us to build up one another. Let us be one in you. For your sake, let us learn to wait on the Spirit's move. We know that the hour is so late, and you'll be coming soon. La da da, ba 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 da ba ba da da. Ba 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 da ba ba da 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 da. Ba 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 da ba ba da da. Let us be one in you. Let us be one. Lord, let us rest up in your spirit, knowing full well that we're in your hands. Oh God, open up our hearts so we can hear it. Let us be one in you. Let us be one. Ba 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 da ba ba.